Hello again. It's Rob Overly, and I'm now with Bob Chagrasulis. And Bob's in Maine, and it's kind of cool there. It's a nice winter February, I'm sure. We have a nice subtropical storm here in New Zealand, so it's kind of rainy and wet as Cyclone Gita comes barreling towards the west coast of New Zealand. But anyway, we're going to do a member talk with Bob if the technology holds together for me. And with that in mind, I'm just going to go ahead and invite Bob to the podium. So that being said, Bob, the podium is yours.
Great, Rob. Thanks for the opportunity to do this. My name is Bob Chagrasulis. I'm a medical doctor in Maine, in the United States. And I'm very happy to be a new member of the EWASH Club. I also like the idea that it's headquartered in Dunedin, New Zealand, which I had a great opportunity to visit for a month or two a few years ago. Remember, my traveling companion was from New Zealand. She's a nurse I worked with, and she says, "Bob, could you live here?" And I says, "Christine, I could live there in a minute." So I enjoyed New Zealand. Anyway, I'm happy to be part of EWASH. I met some of you at the Atlanta convention, and Ron Denham had encouraged people to be involved, and so I have been since last fall. Again, as I mentioned, I'm a medical doctor. Actually, before I went to medical school, I was a chemical engineer, and that was my background for medicine, which doesn't seem all that usual, and it's not, but it worked well for me. So I studied to be a general surgeon, and my specialty in general surgery was trauma surgery. So I'm a trauma surgeon by profession. I joined our local Rotary Club here in Maine. I was a charter member of our club about 25 years ago, and we almost immediately got started, or I had actually, now that I think of it, I had already been going to the Dominican Republic leading medical mission trips with my church. And the Eastern Dominican Republic, out of the city of La Romana, is sugar, sugar, sugar everywhere. It's all sugar plantations between the capital, which is Santo Domingo and San Pedro, from the central part of the country to the east, which people would know as Punta Cana, is all sugar. So there are probably about 400 sugar plantations in the Eastern Dominican Republic. And you'll hear me use the word Bate, and Bate is just a little village where the sugarcane people live. So the sugarcane cutters and their families live in a little village on the Bate within a big plantation. The plantations can be a variable size, anywhere from 25 homes to 2,000 homes. But anyway, we used to take, excuse me, we used to take our medical teams from a hospital we were building in La Romana called the Good Samaritan Hospital out into the countryside and do clinics for the sugarcane cutters, who were primarily Haitian people. In fact, they're all Haitian people. Very few Dominicans cut sugarcane. They've traditionally, for more than 100 or 200 years, brought the Haitians over to do that work. And where in the United States, for instance, we do have sugar in Texas, Louisiana, and Florida, it's all cut by combines. In the Dominican Republic, it's all cut by hand because the Haitian workers are so available. Anyway, so while I was doing the medical teams there, what we were seeing were a lot of waterborne diseases, things that we would commonly call dysentery, amoebic dysentery, which would be parasites or bacterial or viral dysentery. And so I started asking people, what's the water here? Why is it so dirty? Because it comes out of the ground clean and then is contaminated somewhere near the surface, usually because they put their latrines there. In any case, when I was back home in the United States and a new Rotarian, one of the things I discovered was that Rotary was very interested in water. This was, before we were defining all of our goals quite so strictly, but water projects around the world were a big thing that Rotary was doing. So I said, well, this makes perfect sense. We had the new hospital in La Romana in the Dominican Republic. And I asked the CEO at the time, I said, what are you going to do for water here? Because even in the city, it was nasty. Everybody had some kind of, they bought bottled water. In fact, the Dominican Republic is the largest consumer of bottled water per capita in the world. Okay. And so the bottled water people, you know, covet their business, and they don't like water purification systems because it cuts into their business. But anyway, at the hospital, I said, you know, you're going to go broke if you just have everybody washing and drinking and everything bottled water. So the very first Rotary grant I wrote with my new club was to put a water filtration system in for the hospital. So it's your typical reverse osmosis and ultrafiltration and ultraviolet program that anybody would have. And all of a sudden, they had pure water in the hospital, or drinkable, potable water. A medical team like mine that came down to visit from Texas saw that they had clean water, and some of the people on that medical team happened to be kidney dialysis technicians, and they said, oh, now you can do dialysis here. You've got clean water. The problem is we're so close to the Caribbean, there was salt in the water, which didn't affect the drinking, but it would affect the kidney dialysis. So my second grant with Rotary was to put in another water filtration system, and we filtered the filtered water for the kidney dialysis unit. So now all of a sudden, chronic renal patients in the Eastern Dominican Republic didn't just die, they could come down and be put on kidney dialysis. I got involved with, this was in my first club, but subsequently I moved up to Eastern Maine, and my district there, 7810, is an international district with about, well, all of the clubs in New Brunswick, which are about 30 clubs, and about 10 at the time, there are more now, and about 10 clubs in Eastern Maine. So I was in Eastern Maine. And with that new district, somehow I had the good fortune to become acquainted with Ron Denham and the beginnings of WashRag. And back in, this would have to be about 2005 or something like that, Ron set up the first WashRag Summit, although he didn't call it that, in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. So that was my first trip to Haiti. That was the first time to meet Ron Denham. That was the first WashRag Summit, and it was terrific. And I've gone to every WashRag Summit since that I could, if I was at the international convention. But that WashRag Summit really lit the fire for me to know that there were Rotarians from all over the world interested in water, sanitation, and hygiene education in the schools with women, whether or not they're in the schools. We were bringing them in the schools with the children, and it really opened up a lot of doors. So I had the grants and the programs to purify the water at the hospital, but I still was doing my clinics out in the sugar plantations. So these people were drinking nasty water, and they had the childhood diseases primarily, although the adults, you know, didn't like to drink the water any better than they did. But we had a lot of very sick children in the clinics from the water. So this was about the time that some of the biosand technology was really taking off, primarily from Canada and the CAWST out in Western Canada. And we made arrangements to find out how to build our own biosand units. And as many of you might know, the first ones were made out of concrete. So we began a little business at the hospital. We made the molds. We had 4 or 5 guys working for us and making, I don't know, 6 or 8 of these filters a week, because they had to cast the concrete. And they were working fairly well, or at least we thought they were. And at the Los Angeles Rotary Convention, again, in the WashRag Summit, I met up with Ron there, but I also met the people from Michigan who had started to produce, this was the Hydrate company, and this was the Safe Water team, and they had started to produce the Hydrate BioStand plastic filter, which weighed about 30 pounds in comparison to the concrete filters, which weighed about 300 pounds. And I tried to get them down into the Dominican Republic, because it became obvious that we had some design flaws in our concrete filters, and they weren't working as well as they should. So with some time, after a few years and a few more Rotary grants, we were able to get Hydrate BioSand filters down into the Dominican Republic. We put out 5,000 or 6,000 of them straight away, sometimes with Rotary grants, sometimes with Rotary clubs coming down and paying for the filters, and sometimes with visiting North American teams from medical schools, churches, hospitals, that sort of thing, would come down and pay for the biosand filters. And my feeling was they were working reasonably well. Sorry, I had a good drink of water here. Water. And the problem is, this would have been about 5 years ago, something happened in Haiti, and that was the earthquake. And subsequent to the earthquake, about within a year or so afterwards, was the cholera epidemic. And so cholera, as we know, spread quite rapidly through Haiti, and the Dominican Republic was in a huge panic that it was going to come over to their side of the island, because the border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic is quite porous. The people pass back and forth very easily. And so the government and the sugar companies began to heavily chlorinate at the source the water on the sugar plantations. And so for those of you who know how the biosand filter works, its strength is in the biosand, the biologic layer above the sand, or maybe in the sand, but at the top of the filter, which relies on bacteria to destroy the harmful bacteria. The problem is, if you put chlorine in the water ahead of putting it into that filter, it destroys that biologic layer, that active biologic layer. So all of a sudden we had 6,000 or 8,000 filters out in the Eastern Dominican Republic that were not functioning to take out the bacteria or the viruses or the parasites. They were only functioning because the water was chlorinated, and they were functioning as sand filters to take out big particles like parasites. And the companies and the government only intermittently chlorinated the water, but it made it smell bad. It smelled like a swimming pool, and the people wouldn't drink it. And then the government wouldn't chlorinate for a while, and the water got dirty. So we clearly needed another technology. And just about that time, as would happen, an engineer from Kohler, Kohler, the Kohler company in the United States, was visiting the Good Samaritan Hospital with some Rotarians, and I met him. His name's Tim White, and he's since left Kohler, but he was one of the engineers on a new filter that Kohler was making for use in quote-unquote developing countries. But it was a small filter, but with a ceramic filter element, which of course is proprietary, but it's a microporous ceramic element, and it's impregnated with silver, and fits in a small filter unit. It'll filter, quite a lot of water per day, but it only holds about 10 liters. Anyway, they hadn't had it out in the world yet. It had been extensively tested in the laboratory, and it was being produced. And Tim thought that maybe we could put some of these filters out in the Eastern Dominican Republic, that these people in the sugar plantations would be the ideal people to use this, because the filter is not affected by chlorine. Okay, but it will still filter out bacteria, maybe some viruses, again, depending on the size, and certainly parasites. So again, with a global grant through Rotary, and it took a long time because I wasn't very facile at putting the grant together, but we got it together. We had about 25 clubs in the District 7810 contribute to it, as well as the district there and other districts. And it was about a $75,000 grant, and we've put out in the last year about 1,500 of these Clarity filters. The name of the filter is Clarity. That's the proprietary name, Kohler Clarity Filter. And our initial data is that the people are loving them. They drink the water tastes good. It tastes better than bottled water. And that our water testing has been showing that the filters are 100% effective for the bacteria, at least the bacteria we're testing for. I'll be going down in April to sort of check up on it. But it looks like the first filters are out there. Rotary has sent 15,000 of these over to Kenya. They'd already been in India after the hurricane down in Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. A group sent 75,000 filters to Puerto Rico. So the Clarity filter is out there, and that's sort of my current project within Rotary. I think that at the same time that we were working with the biosand filters and now the Clarity filter. We were also very involved with sanitation programs down there, especially hand washing and toilets. Again, you have to sort of fashion your technology to where in the world you're working. And out on the bateys, the people use outhouses. And they dig a hole, they use it till it's full, and then they move it. They don't like composting toilets for some reason because they think they smell. There are a lot of cultural things that restricted us. But we were able to dig, if that's what they want is latrines, we'll dig latrines. And there would be running water on the bateys in the sugarcane villages. So we would, outside of the filter, outside of the toilet, we would build a hand washing station, usually with 2 sinks. We'd put in a preformed laundry sink, and people could wash their hands there when they came out of the toilet. We did the education in the schools so that when the kids came home, they would say to their parents, well, you know, you're supposed to wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. You're supposed to wash your hands when you change the baby. You're supposed to wash your hands when you make food. And so the kids all of a sudden are teaching their parents there's a hand washing sink, and they love it. It's like having a fountain, you know, right there. And they're washing their hair and washing the baby and washing their hands. Doesn't really matter. But that was our focus on hand washing. It was always in the schools. And we would find out on hand washing day when we were doing the education, the mothers always showed up too. Dads were out cutting the sugar cane, but I found them to be very open to whatever we brought into the village too. So that's, as anybody involved in these things know, that's an ongoing, you know, there's no one thing that's separated from the others. Clean water, potable water is not separated from sanitation and hand washing. They all go at the same time. Our problem in the Dominican Republic is each of these bateys, each of these villages, while they might be owned all by the same company, the character of each of these villages is different, and the personality of the villages is different. One of the bateys might have a school, and the kids might be able to go to school, and the next one they don't. So they can walk 10 miles if they want to, or they just don't get to go to school. And our hospital has been good in terms of outreach, and anybody that gets sick on the bateys can come in town to the hospital. So there's a fair amount of education that goes on there as well. Where are we going? Well, again, my focus right now, like I say, since I've left 7810 over in Eastern Maine in Canada, you know, I've been kind of an orphan in terms of Rotary, so I'm happy to be able to be in this club, but I still visit my old clubs and you know, and give my Rotary talk to them. That's sort of a nutshell for me, Rob. What did I miss?
Well, actually, I thought you did really well, and I think that you know, some things we've talked about, and I've actually heard you talk, and you alluded to really understanding culture when you go into a village and to get buy-in from the villagers and what you're doing. That's an incredible, very powerful thing to talk about, because you know, no matter what you got as far as technology, if there's no buy-in from the villagers, then you really aren't doing much at all because it's not sustainable.
Well, the way I first addressed that when we were doing the biosand filters, which were kind of spooky for the people, was as a lot of people know, the Dominican Republic produces a lot of baseball players, and a lot of the baseball players were actually born in the sugarcane villages, like Sammy Sosa was like. He was born in a sugarcane village. So I got to know a lot of these guys, and I would actually bring them with me when we would install filters, and then have them drink the water. So when the people would, and they were just like bringing a rock star out to the village. So when the people would see the baseball players and they were drinking the water, they were cool with it. So even though there was this white man from North America coming down, they were able to buy in, and they didn't have a problem with it after that. They also, and I would just have to say, I was talking to Rob earlier, the Rotary wheel opens a lot of doors. A lot of the schools down there have been built by Rotary clubs over the last decades. And so when people see us come in with that Rotary shirts, they know we're not from the government. They know we're not there for any other reason than to help them. And so they trust us that way too. I was telling Rob too that the Haitians, I learned just from being down there so long how to speak Haitian Creole, and that helps a little bit. Up here in Maine, in Canada, we all speak French, you see, and Haitian Creole is very close to French. So a lot of my Canadian friends come down and we speak French, and that's also a cultural bridge in itself a lot. But again, if they don't, it's the women that are in charge because they're in charge of the children and they're in charge of the kitchen, in charge of the house. And if the women don't like you or don't like whatever you're bringing in, it's just not going to work. Just what I was saying, just the data that I was getting in today, our technicians that go out and visit the villages after they've put these filters out there, they ask about usage data. Do you like the filter? Do you use it? Do the children like it? Does your husband use it? Does the water taste good? And these were all universally positive. So it's the women in the household, and they guard these things too, like their new television set or something. They take them to the house, they set them up in a place of prominence, and they take care of them. And that's good. That's why we're doing it.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way I actually handled the issue of coming in. Is I lived in the village. I mean, if I came into the village, I didn't stay at the resorts. I actually lived in the village itself. So for that week, I was actually part of the village. So I had my translators and all that. But I was really part of the family, and they really treated me that way. Oddly enough, I found out that it's safer to live in the villages than the resort. There's less of a chance of getting sick because they take care of you. They don't want to lose you. So
Right.
or if you go into a resort, you're sort of a transient. So
Yeah.
there's really no connection to you. So they kind of, if you get sick and you get some sort of like gastrointestinal bug, then so be it. You're just a vacation, or you're going to be leaving in about a week, no big deal. But if you're actually in a village with the villagers, oh my gosh, you are a villager.
Yeah.
They really take care of you. So that was really a lot of fun.
We live kind of in a bunkhouse, in the city near the hospital, but it's the local people that take care of us. They cook for us and wash our clothes and everything. Oh yeah, they do take care of you.
That culture is a big deal because a lot of times, I know being a Westerner, I hate to say it, being an American, you always go in with the attitude, I'm here to help you. I'm here to take care of you.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you kind of bring in a lot of personal baggage, and they get this look like, oh my gosh, here comes the parade. I got to tolerate this guy for another week, and he'll leave, and we'll get something maybe out of it, but I just have to tolerate him. If you actually go in as really wanting to listen to them and really understand their culture and appreciate their culture, eat their food, be around them for a while, get to know them and appreciate the culture and them, there's a lot more acceptance of what you're going to offer, especially if part of that offering is based off a dialogue you've had with them, that you actually hear them also and you understand their needs and you're responding to their needs, not something you kind of shove down their throat, but really understand that you understand their issues.
We have usually a woman, almost always a woman, who's a so-called health promoter on the lattes, and they know me from my medical clinics. So when I say to them, these babies are sick and dying because of the bad water, and when we now come in with something to provide clean water, they're right there with me. I mean, in fact, we do it on purpose. We give them the first filter, so the health promoter gets the first one. I mean, but it's a question of trust, really, and I know that the Haitian people out in the Bates, some of them are there because they have contracts with a sugar company. Some of them are there because they snuck across the border, and so they're a little suspicious of people coming in and asking questions. But if what you were just saying, you don't come in and tell them what you're going to do, but you come in and say, what do you think the biggest health problems are? It's always related to water on the Bates. It's always related to water and sanitation. But if you ask them first, they're bought in. It's an attitude, and I'm very fortunate to have learned that mainly with the Haitian people. They're very generous people.
They are. It's kind of funny. You were talking about the sugar plantations and all that. My big partner, my business partner in the Dominican Republic was basically the Brugal family. So, and they provided me the granulated activated carbon in bulk because they use it for the rum company to actually process the rum. So they are able to actually buy granulated activated carbon in bulk, which drove down the cost when it gave it to me. That made my filters affordable, and we actually were manufacturing filters in country.
You know, we haven't gotten we're in there out of the goodness of our Rotarian hearts. The sugar companies themselves aren't that interested in helping us. They let us come in because we're keeping their workers healthy, but they don't contribute any money or labor or anything to anything we're doing. So they just leave us alone, and that's good enough.
Well, true, but I guess for me it was the thing where you begin to understand who your allies are. The Catholic Church is great as far as moving product in. I actually move things in under their charitable umbrella, and not have to worry about tariffs and charges and all that stuff because I was under Catechos, which is the Catholic church, and that was great getting through customs. And oddly enough, you appreciate this. My villages were predominantly Protestant, so you can imagine the push and pull between the Protestants and the Catholics in the Dominican Republic. It's, oh my God, here we go again.
And of course, the Dominican Republic's a Catholic country, just like Haiti. But they say you have to be careful when you talk about culture. You have to be careful driving these religious lines because they say in the Dominican Republic it's 80% Catholic, 20% Protestant, and 100% Voodoo.
That's
so
Haiti.
If you're, huh?
That's Haiti.
If you're out in the plantations, there's a lot of Voodoo.
Yeah, well, that's the Haitians. Yeah. Well,
that's what?
Those are the Haitians, but yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's you really hear that in Haiti, that it's X number Protestant, X number Catholic, but 100% Voodoo or Mystique. Yeah, so I've heard that a lot too, and they're right. That's pretty much what it is. So
well, that's one advantage to being a Rotarian because we truly, even though everybody may have their own religious affiliation or not, we really don't come in as a religious entity. So not like we work with all the churches. There are a lot of churches, a lot of different Protestant churches, Mormons, Catholics, everybody down in the United States.
Yeah,
Rotarians, non-sectarian.
It's a fine line you walk when you talk about partners. Politics, as you know, in the Dominican Republic is really tough because they're very transient and they're always going against each other. You really cannot ally yourself with a politician because they could be gone and the next guy would just have nothing to do with you. So you really
part of it is too, our missions are short term. And I'll say to my people on my team, especially the medical team, they'll see something that's really very unfair. And which in America we wouldn't tolerate. And I'll say, but don't say anything because it's not your country. Don't make trouble because you're going to go home Saturday and these people that you're stirring up could lose their job. So we have to be very careful. We are guests in another country after that.
You mentioned another thing I thought was really pretty interesting. You were talking about drinking the water, at least having your baseball players drink the water. One of the things I've done with my volunteers is to make sure they don't bring bottled water and drink from bottled water, but rather drink from the filter. Because if you promote the filter, drink from the bottled water, what you're basically saying is I don't trust what I'm giving you. So really being sensitive about the message you're giving people when you're in country.
They're watching us all the time, so that's good.
Yeah, and again, it's just really funny because as you mentioned, you're actually doing work on the east in La Romana, and I was in the west, northwest, and around Puerto Plata, Sabana de Viasca, and Gaspar Hernandez, and just seeing all the interactions going on in the country and what's happening, and understanding about the Haitians and how they were sort of the lower rung and really treated like not even second-class citizens. They were just dirt as far as the Dominicans are concerned.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But as an American, I see that, and but I don't comment on it when I'm down there because again, it's not my country. It's not my place to say. But no, we see that. It's pretty dramatic, actually.
Now, again, I think what's really exciting again is to find out that it's more than the technology. It's very easy as being professionals, whether it's medicine or engineering or what have you, to talk purely in terms of technology, but to realize there's a very strong cultural, economic, logistic aspect to these projects. And that if you're not familiar and don't at least acknowledge that, then you're really doing your project a disfavor. Really
Well, I
need
think that's important. And I mean, for those of us who've been traveling, say, to the same place like I have for 25 or 30 years, I understand that. But this is why I think it's important in the global grant applications and process that Rotary now requires the community needs assessment. Now, of course, you always require a local Rotary club, but you really have to know more about the area you're going in than just to pick out a place on the map and say, oh, that place needs a well, I'm going to go drill them one. You know, you have to know the community that you are proposing to work with, and you have to buy into it. In other words, you have to say, or they have to buy into you. You have to say, what do you need? I'm from Rotary. This is the kind of things we're looking at, and you can usually find common ground. And I think that community needs assessment as part of the global grant process is essential.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And the whole idea of buy-in too, that really, in the end, all I am is a facilitator for the village. So, well, it's been fun talking to you. I really enjoyed this. It was, it's kind of nice being able to talk to Maine for a while, the other side of the world, and all the things that are happening with you. And hopefully we'll get you more involved. And I think, as I mentioned to you, I see the aspect of health efficacy as being a very major point as far as projects go, and even a committee and understanding how water and wash projects work. But at the same time, just getting you involved, and hopefully we'll have you involved in the Wash E Club more and more.
I look forward to it, and I look forward to seeing any of you that are going to be in Toronto, either just for the convention or for the Wash Rag Summit as well. And I'll be up there since that's in my neck of the woods. I'm not sure if I'll get to Germany next year, but I can make it to Toronto. That's close.
I'll see you then.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, take care.